Hi guys, welcome to the Blank Drawings podcast. Welcome to the 4th episode. Today we're going to be talking about burnouts for creatives, to be specific. But I feel like this is the type of topic that, especially in modern day, a lot of people come across, a lot of people experience, whether they actually know it or not, or whether they like it or not. It's definitely something that we come across a whole lot. I'm just going to start off by defining what burnout is. I'm going to give two different definitions. One that is markedly more scientific, and the other that is considerably more on the simplistic side. So the first definition, according to frontiersn.org, is burnout is a psychological syndrome characterized by emotional exhaustion, feelings of cynicism, and reduced personal accomplishment. In the past years, there has been disagreement on whether burnout and depression are the same or different constructs, as they appear to share some common features, for example, the loss of interest and impaired concentration. And then the second definition is it's the physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. I think we can all agree that the second one was much less of a mouthful, and so for the purposes of this episode, we're going to be using that second one. When it comes to burnout, let's start with what does it look like? What does burnout even look like at all? Am I burnt out? Well, as a creative, sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you have a decision to make. Am I going to smash it? Or is it going to be one of those meh days? Is it going to be one of those days where I am going to do everything that I set out to do? Maybe you had a weekly planner. Maybe you had something that you planned to do on the Monday and it just didn't work out on that particular occasion. The truth of the matter is that everyone has those meh days, and everybody is going to have a situation where they're not feeling up to it. They didn't show up, or they don't feel like they've shown up. And so as a result, it will ultimately feel as if you are not an accomplished person because you didn't smash it today, because you didn't get as much work done today as you may have wanted to, or you didn't get as much work done as your coworkers, or perhaps if you're a freelancer like myself, if you didn't do the things that you set out to do that you wanted to do on that particular day. I was watching this video from a photographer. His name is Alex Stroll on YouTube. He's got some fantastic videos. I'd urge you to take a look whenever you feel the need to. And one of the things that he mentioned was that I didn't know whether my work was important. Does this actually matter? If I were to stop doing the work that I'm doing right now, would anybody care? And I can say that the world absolutely needs your work. If you stop doing your work, we will not have a version of you to replace you. Because as we spoke about in episodes past, specifically the first episode when we were talking about imposter syndrome, your uniqueness, your quirks are your superpower. And without you, we can't have a replica. We can't clone you and your unique abilities, your unique personality and such. And when those feelings become more deep-seated, those feelings of lack of accomplishment, those feelings of lack of identity, they become more prevalent. What eventually happens is you become burnt out. So perhaps sometimes burning out looks like I can't sleep because I didn't do that thing. I'm losing my hair because I can't manage to do all these things that I set out to do. I am stress eating because I'm just not able to do the things that I feel like I need to be doing right now. And so as a result, what we see is that a whole lot of people are walking around burnt out, but they're still doing what they need to do because they just need to do it. But burnout is literally reduced concentration, and it literally leads you to have less creative thoughts. I was also listening to another podcast on YouTube whereby I forgot the name, but they quoted Friedrich Nietzsche, and he said that the best ideas are the ones, I'm paraphrasing, the best ideas are the ones that come about when we're walking, when we're active, not necessarily when we're sitting at a desk. That's not to say that sitting at a desk and coming up with ideas is a bad thing, far from it. But what he was trying to say is that if you want to come up with the best ideas, you have to be active. And sometimes burnout literally stops you from being active. We have become so engrossed in this hustle culture that I was scrolling on Twitter the other day, and then I saw this tweet. It said, if you're in your 20s, why are you sleeping 8 hours? And I was just thinking to myself, how absurd is this? At the end of the day, we are now in a position where we are weaponizing productivity. We're saying productivity is the only way to go. And if you are not productive, something is wrong with you. You have to be productive no matter what your mental state may be. Now I understand there's going to be situations where you have to do what you have to do. There's going to be times when you don't have the luxury to actually afford yourself that time off or that time away from your work and such. So you will work whilst you're burnt out. It's happened to me before many times. I can't tell you the number of times it's happened to me before, but that's not necessarily to say that it's a good thing. It's something that can happen, sure, but it's not necessarily a good thing. Anyway, I went on a tangent there. The bottom line is that burnout will affect your outcome. Burnout will affect your ability to produce what you claim to produce on a consistent basis, because it literally stops you from being creative. It literally stops you from waking up in the morning with any enthusiasm, because there's so much that you attach to your productivity. Those are quotes that I got from Rahaf Hafush on one of her TED Talks, and she said, my identity was linked with the idea of productivity. She had an episode where her level of burnout just stopped her body completely, physically, mentally. Waking up in the morning was a difficulty, and going to bed at night was a difficulty. She stopped enjoying the things that she used to enjoy because there was consistent stresses at work for her, and she couldn't write because she's a writer. And so as a result, we have to understand that burnout looks mostly the same across the board, but it can and most likely will look different for you because we are all different people. We all have different personality traits. And so burnout looks like impaired concentration. You can't really concentrate. You can't sleep. You're stress eating. I can't speak for hair loss in everybody because obviously some have full heads of hair and some not so much. Speaking to myself, yeah. But when it comes to burnout, those are the usual symptoms, signs and symptoms, so to speak. And that's how it looks like. That's what it looks like. Now, considering that we basically have described what it looks like, now let's talk about how we can avoid it. How best can we avoid burning out? Well, for one thing, we have to make sure that we understand who we are, what we are. I'm a graphic designer, for example. I can have that logo done. Maybe I'll have it faster than I probably should, because generally speaking, I tend to work in a relatively fast-paced way, relative to some of the designers that I've worked with. That's what I'll say. And if I'm consistently putting out work, if I'm consistently putting out all these deliverables, and I'm not really taking any rest in between, I'm going to get burnt out. I am going to get burnt out. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it comes to things like that. So one of the things that in my research I found out is the best way to really deal with burnout. Now, one of the ways that I discovered in my research and in my own experience when it comes to dealing with burnout is, first of all, you need to understand who and what you are. You need to understand that there are people that are going to be looking at you and they want to understand exactly what it is that you do. So you don't necessarily have to prove a point to them in terms of them understanding what it is that you do, for example, and whether it matters or not. If you understand by yourself that this work that I'm doing, I'm leaving an imprint on this world. Because someone asked me years back, why did I want to be a graphic designer? And one of my answers, there are many, one of my answers is that 50 years down the line, a century down the line, I want to be able to say that even if the company is not even using that particular artwork anymore, I want to be able to tell my kids and grandkids that this is what I did. This is what I left behind. This made an impact in ABC ways. And that's something that nobody will ever be able to take away from you. And by the same token, they'll never be able to take that away from you because you made that. You created that. You contributed to that. And the more you know self, the more you understand self and appreciate self, the less you will be feeling like you need to prove a point. My old boss once told me that design is if you have nothing to prove, because you really do, you don't have anything to prove. In any case, when it comes to who people hire, for example, who people like, I was listening to Jamie Brindle the other day, and he was saying that the people that get hired are not always the best practitioners, because there has to be more to you than just how good are you at what you do. And that gave me a sense of comfort and solace, because I used to look at myself and wonder whether I would be able to sit at the high table, so to speak. But then when I realized that there's always going to be that client or that set of clients that appreciate me above and beyond just what I can provide in terms of my technical skills, in terms of perhaps its communication and other soft skills along those lines, it made me start to understand myself a lot more, my personality a lot more. And so as a result, that helped me to overcome a lot of the issues in terms of personal worth, and asking myself that question as to whether what I am doing actually is worth it. Because now I understand more than anything else that it definitely is. And you also have to understand that it definitely is. Whatever it is that you are doing as a creator, we need it in the world. And so that's one of the ways that you can overcome that burnout. Self-introspection. A lot of people don't do it. Take stock, take a step back, understand who and what you are and what you provide to the world and how it benefits the rest of the world. Not only in a monetary fashion, but also in terms of what impact do you have in the world, And then going on to the second point when it comes to how best to overcome burnout, take breaks, relax, rest. The dreaded R words, relax and rest. Because some of the best ideas come about when you're not expecting it. Some of the best ideas come across when your mind is not necessarily sharply fixated on that. That's why sometimes creativity needs for you to step out. It needs for you to take your mind off things. It needs for you to rest. There's something in football called rest defense. And I didn't understand that particular concept until someone explained it to me very slowly. But rest defense is essentially the shape of a football team when they're not actively defending. Now, it might seem as if it's not that important, but it literally could be the reason behind a team conceding one goal or conceding none. And those fine margins could, being an Arsenal fan, I know this all too well, those fine margins can affect whether you're going to win a title, or you're going to be runners-up, or you get relegated, or you're going to stay up. Now, when it comes to things like rest defense, like I said, this is essentially what relaxation and rest is for you as a creative. It may not seem important. It may seem as if you're wasting your time. It may seem as if you're being lazy, but it's not necessarily a luxury. It's a necessity. Ask anybody in any line of work whether they feel better if they had a weekend's rest or if they feel better if they were working all through the weekend. Chances are the answer that you'll get is they'll feel better after they got some rest during the weekend, because we are not machines and we shouldn't subject ourselves to work like them, because we are not made of metal, we are made of flesh and blood, and we need that rest, we need that sleep. So things like hustle culture, as I am a person who does not like hustle culture. Not in the sense that I'm not a hard worker, far from it, I am. I know that for myself, above and beyond what anybody else would say. But hustle culture it trivializes the stages that we have to go through to be able to hustle. There are so many things that you have to do above and beyond just the hustling itself. And also the connotations of hustling, I'm not the biggest fan of, but each to their own. I would say that working hard and hustling are not necessarily the exact same thing. So that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, but that is a story for another day, and I presume it's going to be a pretty long rant in that regard. And then the third point on how to deal with burnout. Interacting with nature. I like water. I like the sight of it, the sound of it, how it reflects the sky. Just water, just being a nature person, interacting with nature, just being in a place, in a wide open space where there's green grass, where there's trees, where there's places where I can chill on the grass. It's something that really helps, because there are no notifications, there are no incoming calls, there are no disturbances when it comes to nature. It's just you and nature as it's intended. And that is something that really helps in terms of just calming you down a lot more. There are scientific studies that back up the fact that just looking at moving water or being in a wide open field actually calms you down. And from the hustle and bustle of the modern day world, that's something that we could all use a lot more of. And then the third option, or actually it's the fourth option / point is having a notepad. Just write things down. Oftentimes these days we use our phones to write things down, but that's not always the most effective way of noting down your ideas. The notepad is something that you will always know, this is for writing my ideas down. This is for, maybe it's budgeting, maybe it's dreams and aspirations, things like that. Because on your phone, there's so many other things that you're going to do. There's so many other things that need to be done. There's so many other distractions. Whereas on a notepad, there's a singular focus on it. So I would definitely suggest having a notepad and just writing down ideas, writing down feelings, everything that you're just going through and experiencing. Why not write it down? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now I'll go into something a bit more personal in terms of me and how I deal with burnout. I have a couple of favorite rappers, but probably by far the one who's on top of the tree is J. Cole. Any one of my friends who's listening to this voice note, I promise, is probably rolling their eyes because it's abundantly clear with me. And one of the lines that he said in one of his songs is that things don't always connect as soon as you press play. And that really touched me, because what essentially he was saying was that sometimes you do all the things that you're supposed to do. You've got those 10 logos done. You've got those articles done. You've got that photo shoot done. you got all these things done, you got that wedding client and things like that, but it just doesn't feel right just yet. It doesn't feel like you've accomplished anything just yet. It doesn't feel like you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing, and yet you are. Sometimes it takes time for it to sink in that, yeah, I'm actually doing good here. I'm actually doing very well for myself. The need for external validation is something also that contributes to that, the issue of burnout, in the sense that you're waiting for people to tell you how good you are. You're waiting for people to like that post. You're waiting for people to subscribe to that YouTube podcaster whose name is Tinatenda Vincent Vashuba, which is something that you should absolutely do, by the way. And that's not necessarily a reason why you should feel validated. You should feel validated within yourself. You should feel that I am enough as it is, because you are. This goes back to that imposter syndrome. These two things are inherently linked one way or another. So what I tend to do is I sometimes read books. I sometimes go on YouTube and I just watch history, philosophy, geography content, just looking into the history of my people, the history of the world, and then looking into philosophy. I'm pretty sure it's not lost on you the fact that I'm a bit of a philosophy buff when it comes to how I look at things, and it's definitely something that was contributed to, or that has contributed to me being able to get past these things in terms of burnout and imposter syndrome. And then also geography, just looking at what the world is like, geopolitics, things like that, is really something that I'm definitely into. And then the last one, or the last two, comic book lore. I am such a nerd. Make no mistake, I am such a nerd. Maybe not necessarily reading the comic books themselves, not that much, but I'm definitely a comic book fan. Batman is my favorite superhero, by the way, so yeah. Anyway, and then gaming. That's something that I definitely do. I don't do it as often as people probably expect that I do, but it's definitely something that I like doing. I dare you to beat me on Mortal Kombat with Noob Saibot. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Went on a massive tangent there. But one of the things, or rather one of the quotes that I actually came across whilst I was doing research for this particular episode is something that came from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Wonderful woman. She inspires me. She's got so much knowledge. Like, that would probably be my dream guest in terms of this particular podcast. I would love to actually get to talk to her and meet her and just pick her brain on certain things. But one of the things that she said is, to return to the books of my childhood is to yield to the strain of nostalgia that is curious about the self I once was. Now that is very also philosophical, but one thing that stood out to me was the last part where it says, about the self I once was. Now, I did mention that in another episode, every single version of you is going to demand an upgrade. You have to make changes, you have to consider certain things. Things will change inevitably because life has changed and change is life. However, don't forget who you once were. Another quote, in order to grow, I refuse to allow the child within me to die. Because it's that childish naivete almost. It's that childish need to remember who you were, who you once were, that childish need to be creative, that childish need to discover, that childish need to be more, just to learn more. And it's something that, unfortunately, a lot of adults, we allow that part of us to die. But it really shouldn't, especially when you're creative, because you need to discover more about yourself. You need to learn more about who you are. And the more you know who you are, the less likely you will be to have anything else imprint upon you, to the extent that you overwork yourself and you get to a point where everything that is around you becomes a potential stressor. Now, that's not to say that I'm blaming anyone for feeling burnout, because I have felt burnt out many a time. It's something that I still struggle with. It's something that on a certain basis of regularity, you can feel that, okay, I need to take a step back. I need to understand exactly what's going on with me, and I need to be kind to myself. Not to sound like a therapist or anything, far from it. I have a friend of mine. In fact, I am grateful to have so many friends in the creative industry. All of you guys, if you're listening to this, you are awesome and you're really doing great work. Y'all always inspire me. And one of my closest friends, was just telling me recently that he was feeling burnt out and that he was going through a phase where he lost the passion for the job, really. And this is a very passionate person. This is someone who even pushed me as well to become better consistently. Even now, consistently pushes me to become better than what I am. And I can say for a fact that I know that is burnout. It's not a matter of him not being good at his job or anything like that, far from it. It's just a matter of burnout. When you have so much stuff that's going on, when you've got so many things that are going on in your life, when you've got so much stress that's just coming at you, sometimes you need to take a step back. Sometimes you need to go look at some water. Sometimes you need to interact with nature, write your feelings down. Watch a YouTube video about philosophy, Reconnect and use your creative energy in other ways apart from just what you use on a daily basis. It's something that I told him directly as well. So it's something that I feel really helps, and it may be something that is far-fetched for someone who's outside of the creative industry, but we have to try our best to explain these things to people, especially if there's people that are in charge. I had the joy / pleasure of being able to work under designers. So they essentially understood when someone is feeling burnt out. So they would do certain things like team building exercises, things like that, but not in the traditional sense. It was far more, let's go out and just relax for a bit, away from the office. Let's not spend too many days in the office. Let's take walks. Let's do something fun. Let's do something that's going to take our mind off all these things, and it'll be more conducive for your mind to come up with new ideas as soon as you are done taking some time out, taking a step back. It's really important, and I would strongly advise that anybody who's listening to this, take a step back, get some rest. Just to recap, take a step back, get some rest, use your creativity and your creative energy in other ways. Take walks, take breaks, exercise, interact with nature, interact with nature. Water, I suggest water so much, you have no idea. And have a notepad, write your feelings down, do some things that are unique to you. Remember the self that you once were and go back to that. In as much as you can grow, there's nothing wrong with growth, but never forget who you once were and who you want to become. That's it for this week on this week's podcast. Essentially, this one was a bit of a long episode because this is something that I'm quite passionate about and I've experienced many a time before. So I just want to hopefully help someone in terms of how best to deal with burnout. Now, let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. It's been a pleasure sharing my journey with you, and I hope to continue sharing my journey with you. I love hearing from you guys, so let me know wherever you hear this. what you would like for me to speak about what you'd like to hear more about me or about these things that I'm talking about on this podcast. And see you next time, guys. Take care.